So Prince Harry is sitting in a room having just watched his father, King Charles, reject his final desperate plea, and the story of how we got here is way more complicated than just a family fight. It's a story about how a monarchy draws a line in the sand, not with a sword, but with a carefully worded palace statement that basically says the Duke and Duchess of Sussex titles are stripped, and that decision is permanent. And honestly, the fact that the palace calls it constitutional clarity, while Harry is at home tearing the announcement in half, is where the whole thing gets really interesting. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure you subscribe to Crown Watch so you don't miss a single update. Charles lowered his eyes to the page and stopped at the handwritten lines about Archie and Lilibet. The king read them twice, then he placed the appeal flat against the desk and kept one hand over it as though pressure could hold back what was coming. The Duke and Duchess of Sussex titles were royal dignities granted through the crown, meaning they linked Harry and Meghan to the institution after they stepped away from official service. Removing them would not simply change two names, it would close the last formal bridge between the couple and palace life. Harry waited for the response with a belief he could not admit aloud. He hoped his father would separate family pain from royal punishment. He expected anger, conditions, a warning, but he believed Charles might delay the announcement for the children. That hope collapsed when the reply arrived. The message offered no negotiation, no private concession, and no promise of another review. It said the dispute had moved beyond reconciliation and become a matter of institutional authority. The closed door changed everything. Charles understood that the royal household, the staff structure, managing the monarch's duties and decisions, was already moving toward confirmation. A palace secretary entered carrying the statement, its wording approved and release time fixed. Harry's plea had reached the king before publication, but the machinery behind the decision had begun earlier. The monarch could still have stopped it. He chose not to. Harry read the rejection in silence. Meghan watched his expression change before he finally said that the titles were gone. He did not shout. He stared at the final line where his father made clear the decision was permanent. Yet another wound waited beneath that verdict. Someone inside the family had argued that the Sussex titles could no longer be protected, and Harry had not learned whose voice had carried the greatest force. As the palace doors closed around Charles's decision, attention shifted to the people trapped on opposite sides of it and to the personal wounds that had made compromise almost impossible. This was never merely a dispute over two royal titles. For Charles, it was a test of whether a king could protect the monarchy without destroying what remained of his relationship with his youngest son. For Harry, it was proof that every door back into the family had finally been locked. And for Meghan, watching from thousands of miles away, the decision carried a brutal message. The palace was no longer treating their separation as temporary. Harry held the phone close, but said nothing. Meghan watched him read the rejection, saw his breathing slow, and understood before he spoke. The Duke and Duchess of Sussex titles were royal styles granted by the crown, meaning they tied the couple's public identity to the monarchy. Losing them stripped away the last formal label connecting their work and marriage to the institution they had left behind. Charles remained seated after approving the announcement. The king looked toward an empty chair where his son had once argued, laughed, and waited for family meetings to begin. He knew the decision might protect royal authority, yet it could end every fragile attempt at reconciliation. Harry had lost the title. The monarch feared he had lost a son. Meghan finally asked the question neither wanted answered. Was this only about public usage, or had the palace made the removal permanent? Harry stared at the closing sentence. His silence told her everything. She asked whether Archie and Lilibet would now be treated differently. He could not promise they would not feel the consequence. William approached the wording with colder discipline. The prince believed a royal title could not remain a shield for someone who attacked the institution while drawing power from its name. Yet his position was personal. Every Sussex accusation had fallen across his wife, his father, and the future he was expected to protect. The final sentence almost offered an escape. A draft suggested the titles might be reviewed if circumstances changed. William crossed it out. According to a documented palace account prepared after the meeting, he argued that uncertain language would create another cycle of demands, briefings, and public pressure. Charles read the revised line and did not restore what had been removed. Harry believed his brother had closed the door. Meghan believed the palace had erased their final protection. Charles believed delay would make the damage worse, but none understood that one private confrontation had transformed years of bitterness into a decision the crown could no longer reverse. To understand why Charles refused even his son's final appeal, the story must return to the private gathering where Harry crossed the line the palace had warned him never to approach. For months, the palace had tolerated criticism, interviews, accusations, and humiliation. Yet none of those moments alone triggered the removal of the Sussex titles. The point of no return came during a private Windsor reconciliation meeting when Harry placed a list of demands before Charles and insisted that continued access, ceremonial recognition, and security guarantees were the price of peace. One sentence in that document changed the atmosphere in the room and convinced William that the arrangement could not continue. Harry entered the meeting carrying years of anger he had never released. Charles watched his son set the papers on the table while William remained across from him. The Windsor meeting was meant to separate family healing from royal status, meaning they would discuss personal reconciliation without promising duties, ceremonies, or privileges. That distinction mattered because every failed invitation and accusation had blurred where the family ended and the institution began. Charles had resisted stripping the titles for one reason. The king feared the act would look like punishment and place Archie and Lilibet beneath the shadow created by adults. He had delayed reviews, softened briefings, and rejected proposals. Harry knew that hesitation existed, and he arrived believing it could be turned into leverage. The room tightened when Harry stated his condition. He told his father that there could be no peace unless he and Meghan received ceremonial recognition, security guarantees, and access to royal events on terms they helped define. William pushed his chair back. The prince asked whether family contact was now being offered as part of a bargain. Harry denied threatening anyone, but the words hung between them. One line changed everything. Harry's proposal demanded that the Sussex title be protected from any future review if he and Meghan never resumed royal duties. A royal dignity is an honor granted through the sovereign, carrying authority because it comes from the crown. To William, making it permanently untouchable would separate privilege from responsibility. To Charles, it turned a wounded son's request into a direct test of royal control. Harry gathered the papers after his father refused to answer immediately. He left believing silence meant hesitation. Instead, Charles waited until the door closed, looked toward William, and asked for the constitutional file governing royal dignities to be brought to him that evening. According to a documented account prepared after the fictional meeting, the king gave one instruction. Every option was now to be examined. The Windsor confrontation began the secret review, but it also prepared the ground for something more painful. Charles offered Harry one final private audience where father and son would say what years of statements never could before the night was over. No advisors sat between them. No cameras waited outside. Charles and Harry faced one another as father and son, but the crown was present in every silence. Harry asked whether the king truly intended to erase the title given to him on his wedding day. Charles answered that no one was erasing his identity. Then he delivered the sentence that ended the argument. Harry could not reject the responsibilities of royal life while demanding permanent ownership of its authority. Harry leaned forward, refusing to let the word settle. The private sitting room had been cleared of aides, lawyers, and secretaries, so nothing could be blamed on palace machinery. A royal title is an honor granted by the sovereign, carrying public status because it comes from the crown. Charles explained that the review was not about erasing his son, but about whether that authority could continue after years of separation from royal service. The accusation came hard. Harry told his father that William's future mattered more than his dignity, and that every decision now seemed designed to protect the heir while punishing the spare. Charles gripped the arm of his chair. The king did not raise his voice. He said love could not mean surrendering every boundary whenever his younger son felt shut out. Harry pushed again. He asked whether William had demanded the removal and whether the prince had written the final wording himself. Charles refused to pass the blame. The sovereign, he said, carried the decision alone. A sovereign is the reigning monarch, the person with final constitutional authority over royal honors. That answer did not comfort Harry. It made the rejection feel even more personal. The silence broke when Harry made one last plea. He asked that Meghan retain the Duchess title even if his own was taken, arguing that she should not lose an identity attached to their marriage. Charles shook his head. He knew the refusal would wound both of them, but preserving one title would leave the same contradiction untouched and invite another bitter fight almost immediately. Her title existed through the same royal grant as his, and the king would not split one decision into two exceptions. Harry rose slowly. He believed William had driven the process and that his father was protecting him. Yet a documented account of the private meeting later showed something more complicated. Charles had not acted under one voice. An alliance had formed inside the family, and each member had reached the same conclusion for a different reason. The door closed behind Harry, but in the adjoining room, another file waited, one that revealed how William, Anne, and the king had sealed his fate together. Harry believed his brother had engineered everything. Yet the decision was not born from William's anger alone. Behind the palace walls, three royal figures had formed an uneasy agreement. Charles wanted stability, William demanded consistency, and Princess Anne feared that continued hesitation would weaken every future boundary of the crown. Their motives were different, but their conclusion was identical. The Sussex titles had become more than family honors. They had become symbols of a conflict the monarchy could no longer contain. William placed the draft beside the Windsor notes and spoke first. The prince argued that royal titles could not become permanent personal brands detached from service while still drawing authority from the sovereign. A sovereign is the reigning monarch whose approval gives royal honors their official force. To him, the issue was no longer revenge. It was whether the crown could demand responsibility from others while allowing one exception to stand forever. Anne answered with colder precision. The Princess Royal warned that precedent, the example one decision creates for future cases, would outlive every person in the room if status remained untouched without duty. Future generations would inherit confusion over where privilege ended and service began. She produced notes from the Windsor confrontation, preserved in a documented account, showing that Harry wanted permanent protection for the Sussex title while rejecting any return under the palace's existing conditions. Charles listened without interrupting. The king moved toward the window and admitted that signing the authorization might cost him his son completely. His voice did not break, but William heard the fear beneath it. The future king replied that uncertainty was already harming everyone. Catherine endured renewed attacks, Charles carried the strain, and Archie and Lilibet remained trapped inside a conflict they had never chosen. The room fell still when Anne pushed the file toward her brother. She did not celebrate. She reminded him that delay had once protected Harry, but now it protected the dispute itself. William agreed, though he insisted the final statement must not sound triumphant. None of them wanted victory. They wanted an ending strong enough to stop the monarchy from being pulled back into the same battle. Charles signed only after adding one instruction in his own hand. The announcement must not insult Harry, Meghan, Archie, or Lilibet. The king could remove royal status, but he would not permit the palace to attack his family while doing it. The ruling was fixed, yet careful language could not soften what followed, and the first collapse began at home. The palace called it constitutional clarity, but for Harry and Meghan, the words landed like an eviction from the last room they still occupied within royal history. The morning after the confirmation, nothing looked different, and yet everything had changed. The house remained still, the children followed their familiar routine, and phones continued to vibrate across the kitchen counter, but every alert carried the same language. Former Duke, former Duchess, titles removed. Harry stood over a printed copy of the announcement as though the words might rearrange themselves. Meghan read it once, placed it down, and asked a question neither of them was ready to answer. What remained now? Harry gripped the paper until the edges bent. The Duke and Duchess of Sussex titles had been royal styles, formal names linking the couple to the crown and public life. Their personal names remained unchanged, but every introduction, commercial reference, official letter, and ceremonial listing would now remove the words that had shaped their identity since their wedding. The loss mattered because it changed how the world would define them and how the monarchy would distance itself from them. The silence broke when Harry tore the statement in half. He stared at the pieces, breathing hard, then bent down and gathered them almost immediately. Anger had given him One sharp second of relief, but it could not erase what the title meant. His marriage, his place in the family, and the final public bond to a life he had once believed would never fully reject him. Meghan remained composed until she opened a drawer and found an old wedding program. The words Duke and Duchess of Sussex still sat beneath their names, untouched by everything that followed. She ran one finger over the line, closed the drawer, and said nothing. Her control held, but Harry saw the humiliation beneath it. Their advisors called with warnings. Organizations were rewriting biographies, business partners were removing royal references, and media outlets had already replaced current titles with former ones. According to a documented internal briefing, the changes were spreading faster than anyone expected. The decision was no longer trapped inside palace language. It was entering every contract, caption, introduction, and public record connected to them. Harry's phone vibrated again. Charles had sent a private message expressing sorrow but not regret. The king wrote that he understood the pain and still loved his son, yet the decision would stand. That difference cut deeper than the announcement itself. Sorrow meant his father felt the loss. No regret meant he would choose the same outcome again. With the titles gone and Charles refusing to reconsider, Harry turned toward William. Beneath years of resentment, he hoped one truth might still change what came next. He needed to hear whether his brother had demanded descending or accepted it when Charles chose duty. There were no secretaries, no prepared notes, and no palace language to hide behind. When William and Harry finally spoke, the conversation began with accusation and ended in something neither brother expected: honesty. Harry demanded to know whether William had wanted to humiliate him. The future king answered that humiliation was never the goal. The goal was to end a contradiction that had poisoned every attempt at peace. Then William revealed what Charles had protected Harry from knowing. Harry had refused mediation because he believed every official channel twisted what the brothers meant. Mediation is a guided conversation led by a neutral person to help two sides speak safely. This time, no advisor softened the words. No courtier carried messages between them. William answered directly, admitting that he had supported removing the titles, but denying that he controlled Charles or pushed the announcement forward. Harry's anger rose before his voice did. He said the title was not merely a label. It connected him to his wedding, his military service, his grandmother's approval, and the future he once thought belonged to him. Losing it felt like watching those memories being stamped as invalid. William listened, then admitted that he no longer knew how to trust his brother. Still, the prince said he had never wanted Harry erased from the family. The silence changed when William revealed what the palace statement had concealed. According to a documented account of their private conversation, Charles had delayed the decision several times. The king had also removed harsher language that could have accused Harry and Meghan of exploiting royal status. He had chosen restraint even while choosing finality. Harry stopped defending himself. For the first time, he understood that his father's refusal had not come from cruelty alone. Charles believed another delay would deepen the conflict, encourage fresh demands, and weaken the crown's ability to set limits. A royal boundary is a rule separating family affection from official privilege, and the monarch had decided that line could no longer move. William did not ask for forgiveness. Harry did not offer it, yet the bitterness inside him shifted into grief quieter and harder to fight. The brothers ended the call without reconciliation, but also without another threat. Outside that conversation, pressure was building. Editors prepared special editions. Broadcasters cleared their schedules, and palace staff received instructions to offer no defense of the decision. Harry's pain was about to become public property, while William's guarded honesty would remain hidden from everyone. What began as a painful family decision now crossed palace gates, filled front pages, and forced the public to decide whether Charles had defended the monarchy or abandoned his own son. By sunrise, the decision was no longer private, constitutional, or carefully controlled. It belonged to the public. Broadcasters interrupted their schedules. Commentators argued over loyalty and punishment, and crowds gathered outside Buckingham Palace beneath a sky of flashing screens. One newspaper captured the entire crisis in 4 words printed across its front page: "The Crown chooses duty." Beneath the headline appeared 2 photographs: Charles alone at his desk, and Harry leaving a car with his eyes lowered. Charles watched the morning broadcast in silence. The report called the decision the most complete royal separation since Harry and Meghan stepped away from official duties, meaning the couple had left their working roles while keeping a public connection to the crown. That connection now looks severed. Palace staff repeated one line. This was constitutional clarity, a formal attempt to make status match responsibility, not an act of personal revenge. The words still sounded personal. Charles heard a presenter describe the moment as a father formally closing the door on his son. The king reached for the remote and turned off the television before the segment ended. Across the distance, Harry watched clips of crowds outside Buckingham Palace. Some signs praised duty, others accused the monarchy of cruelty. His private plea had become public judgment, and strangers now debated his pain as though it belonged to them. One broadcast cut from the palace statement to footage of Harry and Meghan's wedding. The contrast was brutal. A day once presented as a symbol of renewal now appeared beside language declaring that the Sussex titles were gone. Meghan watched the sequence once, then looked away. Harry stayed fixed on the screen, hearing cheers from the past collide with condemnation in the present. William refused to treat the decision as a victory. The prince instructed staff not to brief against his brother, meaning no aid was to feed hostile claims or damaging private details to journalists. According to a documented internal direction, he wanted the matter closed without humiliation. The future king understood that finality could protect the institution, but triumph would deepen the wound. The noise grew before it began to fade. Newspapers chose sides. Broadcasters repeated the same images, and palace gates became a stage for anger, loyalty, grief, and blame. Yet none of it could answer the question waiting inside the family. For the first time, public certainty exposed the private emptiness that language had failed to hide from either man. Beyond the headlines and divided crowds, Charles and Harry were left with no titles to debate and no officials to blame, only the final emotional cost of the choice they had both helped create. In the end, there was no dramatic reversal, no hidden compromise, and no restoration waiting behind another palace door. The Sussex titles were gone. Charles remained firm. William accepted the burden of supporting the decision, and Harry was forced to confront a life no longer protected by royal status. Yet the final meaning of the moment was not simply that a king had defeated a rebellious son. It was that the monarchy had chosen certainty, knowing certainty would carry a deeply human price. Charles opened the final file once more before it was sealed. Palace records, formal styles, official references, and future ceremonial arrangements had all been changed, making the removal final in practice as well as language. A formal style is the official title used in royal documents and public ceremonies. That mattered because every future invitation, announcement, and institutional record would now present Harry and Meghan without the designation that had tied their work to the crown. The king did not destroy his son's plea. He folded it carefully and placed it inside a private drawer, preserving the words beneath the dispute and the child beneath the anger. Charles had defended royal authority, but he could not pretend the decision brought peace. The monarchy stood firmer, the father sat alone with the cost. Harry faced the same truth from the other side. He returned the old wedding program to storage, no longer treating it as proof of a title he still possessed. It had become a memory of a chapter that was closed. Meghan understood that their public lives would continue, but every project would now stand without the royal designation that once connected it to the institution they had left. William accepted no victory. The prince understood that protecting the crown had not repaired his family. It had only created a boundary strong enough to stop the conflict from consuming the monarchy. According to a documented account of his private reflections, he believed the decision was necessary, but he never called it painless. No applause followed because everyone understood what stability had demanded from them. Harry finally understood that Charles's rejection was not another invitation to negotiate. It was a permanent verdict. Freedom from royal duty had brought independence, but independence now demanded the surrender of royal privilege. The palace statement ended the argument over titles, and history recorded the verdict clearly. The crown would endure. Harry would move forward without its protection, and Charles would carry the private sorrow of a king who chose duty even when the cost was his own son.